The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Jasmine, and I'm on the marketing team at AgileThought. Just a little bit about AgileThought. We're a custom software development and consulting company, and we work mostly with Fortune 1000 companies to help them envision, deliver, and maintain software solutions that are critical to their business. Today, I'm joined by our presenters, Jose Chinchilla, who is our data analytics practice lead, and Pat Converse, who is one of our senior client executives. During this discussion today, Pat and Jose will discuss what asset management is, the role it plays in extending the life of your capital investments, and how you can use Power BI to improve the value of those investments. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items. First, we're going to be randomly selecting 3 lucky winners to receive a 1-hour consultation with Jose. So depending on where you are with your analytics initiatives, you can use this consultation for one of 2 things. One, you can use it as a brief visioning and planning discussion so you can learn how to implement Power BI. And Jose will work with you to understand what's needed from a governance, security, licensing, even scalability standpoint. Or you can use it as a chance to help you validate an existing data model with Power BI. You can even talk to Jose about different performance optimization opportunities. We'll be emailing all of the winners after the webinar with next steps so you can get those consults scheduled with Jose. In addition to that, all of today's attendees are going to receive 25% off of Power BI Ignite. Power BI Ignite is one of our solution offerings that will help you get started with Power BI and really accelerate your adoption. We'll explain more about Power BI Ignite at the end of our discussion, and I can send you details after the webinar as well. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to Pat Converse.
Thanks, Jasmine. Hello, I'm Pat Converse. I'm a client executive at AgileThought covering fintech and the energy industry. One topic that I hear among all of my customers is how do I manage my capital investments more efficiently to better forecast CapEx and OpEx spending around my fixed assets. Asset management is very important, and today I want to clarify what context we're going to be talking about asset management in. And for today, the right context is industrial equipment assets, compressors, pumps, and the like. Now, putting a firm number on the true cost of ownership and time to live from a CapEx standpoint can be pretty difficult for these assets. Because forecasting costs for assets is difficult, accurate budgeting can then be a nightmare. OpEx maintenance costs on your asset inventory may not be forecast properly because of unexpected maintenance or asset downtime, which can put a serious strain on your operations from a staffing and budgeting standpoint. In this problem space, when I talk to my customers, almost universally I hear the same things. The top level comment is, we collect all this data, but I can't do anything with it, and I have no idea what we could do with it. But as you dig a little bit deeper and talk about business outcomes that they're trying to move towards, then things get more specific. And you hear things like, we have data disparity and silos. So I can't bring together ERP business data, maintenance and plant operations data, and anything close to real time. So how can I improve my business? Or our systems don't talk to one another. Everything isn't documented the way it should be. And every year I have an open risk item for OpEx expenses around maintenance. Sometimes you hear forecasting downtimes because of the time of life of our assets is incorrect, because we can never bring together all the data to do the proper engineering analysis. With me today I have Jose, who can talk more about how we utilize Power BI to make decision making easier with dashboards and visualizations and address some of these problems. We'll also talk about how we can consolidate data from across those separate data sources and data silos, and how we can prioritize asset management activities based on that information. Jose, you want to take it over?
To further emphasize the point you were making, let me demonstrate a solution that we put together, similar solution we've put together for some of our clients. And for this demo, using SharePoint and Power BI. So what we did for this demonstration, we created a Power BI report that contains data coming from Office 365, in this case, Excel spreadsheets. And this would be, for example, an output or an export out of a perhaps a data historian or a word scheduler system into Excel spreadsheets and upload it into a SharePoint site. We also have data coming in from SQL Server, which has data relating to assets and maintenance records. So this could be the backend system of a data historian that allows us to connect to the backend database system and be able to aggregate and merge this data together into a consolidated view of our assets and our maintenance. And then, like you see on the screenshot, we publish this to a SharePoint site that allows us to manage the security of who has access to these reports and be able to deliver the content in a intranet, for example, if you have a SharePoint online or on-premise deployed in your environment. So let me show you how this solution looks, and then we're gonna look how we put together this using Power BI, Power Query, and using some analytical formulas with DAX. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open my browser, and I'm gonna go to a demo SharePoint site that we put together for a fictitious company called Rocky Point. So as you see, I need to enter my credentials and make sure that I have access to this SharePoint site. Once I enter my credentials, I'm able to hit the SharePoint site, in this case, the default document library, which contains all the Excel extracts that we talked about. We can take a look at one of these spreadsheets, and we can see that we have some asset information along with some maintenance records. So with that data, what we can do is now we can consolidate that into Power BI, into a data model that allows us to do analytical reports and dashboards. So what we have in this initial report is a asset analysis. So this is more of a descriptive type of analysis, which allows us to see where our assets are located, the distribution of those assets in different companies or divisions, what specific plant are they located, and we can categorize them, for example, by categories. So assets that belong to a boiler category, to a compressor category, generator, and we can multi-select and only focus on those that we are interested on. At the same time, Power BI allows us to do what's called contextual filtering, and that is using other visualizations to filter our data. So you can see all of this data has relationships behind the scenes. We're going to see that in the data model in Power BI, and this allows that interactive visualization and filtering. In this particular report, we can see the acquisition across the different asset categories, and also the acquisition over time. And we can see at a glance quick snippets of data like number of assets and total acquisition cost are related to all these assets. All these numbers, again, they correlate with whatever we filter on our visualization. So if I'm looking at regulators or generators, in this example, I can see how many do I have in each different division or company. We can see how many have we acquired over time, and we can see at an aggregate number our acquisition cost as well. So that is very important when doing some of your CapEx and analysis that Pat mentioned. In the next report, we put together a maintenance analysis. And these are the records that we saw on Excel spreadsheet, but also coming from SQL Server that we merged together. And we're able to see what are the different work orders that have been created for the different asset categories, and some of the work activities related to these work orders. We can also use these slicers to filter or navigate our data. and see what how many work orders have been there regarding calibration, consumable replacements, filters, and the actual installations. We can filter our data according to the status of the work orders. We can see that have been completed, 9 are in progress, and 10 are waiting for parts. If we want to focus on what work orders are waiting on parts, we can see that most of them are related to activities like calibration, non-scheduled maintenance, filter changes. So this is very important, and this is actually a big insight from one of our clients. They discovered that a lot of the time, the downtime of their assets was related to not having the right parts or supplies on hand in order to do those scheduled and actually non-scheduled maintenance. So that was a big insight from one of our clients.
One of the other things I noticed is down at the bottom, the maintenance cost work order count. That really gives you a quick way to understand where you're spending your dollars and on what equipment, and where you're probably spending a good bit of your time, and where you should take a look at, process engineering to improve the lifetime and reduce the wear and tear on those particular assets. I love how it can give you that prioritization.
Absolutely, and that was one of the big asks from one of our clients. They wanted to have that quick insight in a report with all their consolidated assets and maintenance records. Another analysis that we often put together for some of our clients are Pareto charts. And with Power BI, it's very easy to create these Pareto charts and be able to analyze our data according to the 80-20 rule. Which states where are we spending most of our time? 80% of the time, what are we working on, and what activities or maintenance are related to those that 80% of our efforts. In this example, at the bottom, I have the different asset categories and the total maintenance cost associated with each of these different asset categories. If we look at the 80% mark, which should be right around this section, we can see that most of our time, all the work and the maintenance is related to assets that fall under the pump, motor, or compressor categories. So this might be the assets or asset categories that break the most or that require more maintenance. And then we can correlate that as well with the 80% rule on what suppliers that are providing some of these parts or assets we need to do more maintenance on. So for example, if we look at the 80% mark, which would be right around here, we can see all the suppliers on the left are the ones that are providing parts or assets that require more maintenance, perhaps more downtime. And we can filter this or be very detailed on what we're looking at. And for example, we're looking at non-scheduled maintenance, right, which is a big item in asset management. We can see what are those asset categories that we're spending most of the time in non-scheduled maintenance, right? These are events or situations where those assets experience some downtime, and that affects the bottom line because we're not being productive. And we can correlate that also with the suppliers. Which suppliers are providing us perhaps with assets or parts that are not up to par, right? That perhaps are not with the right the quality that we expect from them. And we can focus in some of the suppliers, for example, that are on the right side, which means the suppliers in general supply us with parts and assets that don't break as much.
This is great data, especially around the not just the maintenance costs, but also the vendors who are giving you parts that aren't necessarily up to par. This gives you a lot of leverage in how you manage your vendors and how you can manage pricing discussions with them on those parts. When you can show them the data that says, hey, these are breaking all the time, I'm spending a lot of money here, what can you do to help me out? Here, is there a maintenance program that we can work to arrange? Is there a different part that out of your catalog that I need to choose? Or, if the relationship just gets bad, what vendor should I look at for the best parts going forward? This is good data.
Absolutely, and like you said, this gives you a lot of leverage as a customer, so you can negotiate back with your suppliers and make sure that they're not only providing you with good pricing, but also good quality parts and assets. In the next report, one of the a couple of metrics that several of our customers have asked is the ability to get the mean time for failure and mean time to repair. And those two metrics give you the number of days or hours that is expected for an asset to experience some type of downtime. So essentially, how many days from today will this asset experience some type of downtime or will require some type of maintenance? And the mean time to repair is how long will that expected downtime last? So here we have a particular asset that has had 3 work orders and in total has had 116 days of downtime. You can see the details in this table, and you can see that progression over time in terms of maintenance activities. We also can show KPI. So perhaps certain assets may have a goal of an uptime goal of 80%, 90%, and we can quickly validate that against actuals. For example, if one of our suppliers, what the SLA states that you should experience a 99.9% uptime on this asset, we can correlate that against our actuals, and we can see that this asset has not met the 99% uptime goal, right? It's been down 88%, it's been up 88% of the time. So we need to evaluate and do some root cause analysis on that.
And Jose, so some assets just have, time relations for those KPIs, but others have more complex, calculations on what kind of SLA you would expect. How can Power BI handle those kind of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So with DAX, for example, we can create more complex formulas that allow us to not only correlate the data based on our experience in terms of the different maintenance activities, but also we can correlate that with more complex or more robust algorithms and models. For example, using machine learning, you can tap into, for example, Azure Machine Learning Services and be able to create models that give you a more robust indication or forecasting of failure over time. So that is actually something that we worked on within AgileThought. We have a dedicated data science practice, and we have worked with our customers to create models that ingest not only the historical data from the data historians in terms of maintenance, but also telemetry data and machine-generated data, things like temperature, vibration, and other metrics that create a more robust and holistic view of what's happening environmentally around your assets in this case. As you can see, we can create those metrics really easily and understand how much downtime and what is the next expected downtime for those assets. So those are very important metrics that could be generated using your maintenance historical data, or like I was mentioning, more robust models that ingest other data, environmental data, for example, like temperature, vibration. So with all this information, we can derive relatively easy the true cost of ownership or total cost of ownership based on this formula, like you see at the top, taking in the acquisition cost, maintenance cost, operation cost, and any residual value on the books. And we can see visually that most, if not all of our asset categories over its lifetime we are actually investing in or in spending on maintenance just as much as we are spending on the acquisition cost. So that is a very important metric, because you want to know in terms of budgeting and forecasting how much money should you allocate for maintenance activities and keeping your assets up and running in optimal shape. And then the last report I wanted to show you is the asset lifetime. So this is a very important report that we have put together for customers, trying to understand, right now, which assets are up and running that are within the estimated lifetime expectancy, others that did not last as much as the manufacturer and supplier stated, and then assets that actually have are running beyond expected lifetime. So those are three important buckets, and we can actually click on some of these buckets and look at our actual assets and the asset details for those that did not last as much as they were supposed to. We can see assets that actually have lasted beyond the estimated lifetime, and those assets that are within the estimated lifetime. One important insight here for one of our customers was that they had a bunch of assets that were actually lasting much longer than the expected lifetime. So that is great because you don't have to be spending on replacing those assets within the time frame that originally forecasted or budgeted for. But more importantly is the fact that they realized that a lot of their assets were way out of warranty, and that some of these assets actually, there were no longer being parts being produced for them, replacement parts. So that is a very risky position to be, because if that asset breaks, the amount of time it will take to replace the asset, install it, get it up and running is much longer than the ability to repair it. So they gain a lot of insight from this specific report and started a more aggressive project to replace those assets almost right away. Right? So that is all in terms of the demo of the solution. I wanted to show you really quick how we put this together in Power BI. So I have Power BI Desktop open, and as you can see, Power BI Desktop is where we authored those reports that we published to the Power BI service and visualized through SharePoint. And Power BI Desktop is a free download. You can go to powerbi.com, download it, and install it for free. Here within Power BI, you can see that we have our fields or data sets. So these are the actual tables that we use to create these visualizations. As you can see, and I'll explain a little bit later, Power BI has the ability to connect to pretty much any data source that's out there. So it comes preloaded with, I think it's more than 100 connectors that are available when you download Power BI Desktop. And you can connect to sources like flat files, SharePoint folders, database system like IBM, SQL Server, Sybase, Teradata, SAP, and then some other Azure and online services, even to some specialized online connectors, for example, to Salesforce, Zendesk, and many other specialized connectors. So those connectors, we can create what are called queries. And these queries are essentially step-by-step instructions on how to connect to a data and what to do with that data. So in this case, for example, I have my assets data set, and with this data set, I'm extracting data from my Excel spreadsheets. I'm expanding all the rows. I'm merging with my company, expanding that, renaming column, sorting data, creating unique IDs, and adding an index to improve performance. that asset query becomes essentially a building block that I can use for other queries. So in this other query, for example, now I'm merging that query with my maintenance query. And it's very simple as being able to merge or join on columns like asset ID. This will be the unique identifier, perhaps a company ID as well that gives us that unique join to between our assets and maintenance records. So with that said, now we can use those data sets to populate some of these visualizations. We can also create some custom formulas, like Pat was mentioning, in terms of more robust analysis. In the language that Power BI uses for these queries, this formula is called DAX, known as the Data Analysis Expressions. And it's very similar to what you are used to in Excel formulas. And we can create very simple formulas or a little bit more complex formulas that allow us to get the values based on other values in more complex logic. So in summary, in terms of Power BI, we have many features. I highlighted here some of the most important ones. Like I mentioned, the ability to connect to many data sources with the built-in connectors, the ability to connect to both cloud and on-prem data sources, ability to compress large volumes of data in memory, ability to ingest, shape, and transform data using Power Query. So this is analogous to ETLs with ETL tool, which is built in Power BI. The user experience in terms of report development is essentially zero coding. You just drag and drop data sets into visualizations. You require essentially no coding to do that. The Power BI also comes preloaded with a bunch of rich visualizations that you can actually customize. You can create your own custom visualizations, or you can actually import other visualizations from the marketplace. Most of them are free, and you can import them into your reports. You can also share and collaborate with other users securely using the Power BI service. You can create more complex analytical formulas using DAX. Now you can incorporate also R and Python visualizations, so that's important for data science. And one of the biggest features, most important features, is the ability to do data modeling and be able to interact with the data with natural language processing using Cortana Analytics. So said, I want to just talk a little bit about Power BI Ignite, which is our solution offering, which is typically is a 2-week engagement. It will help you implement the Power BI suite, no matter what stage you're on. If you're just exploring it, we do a lot of envisioning and planning. If you're already implemented it or wanted to do a proof of concept, we can help you with that as well. And that solution allows you to, in your staff, your developers, not only to learn from it, but also actually deliver some reports and dashboards using your own data, which is important in order to understand the data modeling, ingestion, and visualization part. So I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to hand it over to Jasmine for some questions.
Thanks, Jose. So some of you sent your questions ahead of time, so we only have time for a few of them. The first one is, can Power BI connect to operations SCADA/historian systems?
Correct. So most of the SCADA systems or data historian systems allow you to connect to different endpoints. So these endpoints could be a SQL Server backend database, or it could be an API. And Power BI has the ability to connect to those either endpoints. So this could be, we've actually connected Power BI to some of the leading data historian systems in the market, and be able to ingest that data through either the API endpoint or SQL database backend.
Thanks, Jose. The other question that we've got is, how would Power BI handle mixed data sources residing on-prem and in the cloud?
So that's a great question. So Power BI has the ability to connect to on-premise data and be able to consume that data in the cloud. The way that is done is through what's known as the on-premise data gateway. So it's a small installation that you do on your on any on-premise server. It doesn't have to be your actual database server. And that allows Power BI to connect from the cloud into any on-premise data source. It also has the ability to connect to any cloud-based solution, a cloud-based application. So any application that known as a software as a service or platform as a service, Power BI has connectors that allow it to connect directly to those online sources as well as the on-premise data sources using the data gateway.
Okay, and we have one final question. Can I set up location-based visualizations in Power BI for looking at pipeline-related assets?
Correct. So Power BI also has the ability to plot your data in maps using big maps, which is already natively with Power BI. You can also bring your own shape files using ArcGIS files. So this could be, geographic type of location, shapes like, state, city, county, whatever level you want to go into in terms of geography. And in addition to that, you can also incorporate VCO diagrams. So for example, some of the past work that we've done for some of our clients, we've been able to create a layout in a VCO diagram of their manufacturing plant, their processing plant, and we've been able to connect data points to all of their different assets or machines that is running on that pipeline. So you can do that with VCO diagrams for more of an industrial type of scenario where you can actually see data flowing through your plant, geographic data. You can also incorporate what's called custom visualizations, and those are Node.js type of visualizations that you can create and do more, have more interactivity perhaps with your data. So yeah, all that is possible with Power BI.
Cool. Well, that concludes our presentation today. Thank you all for attending. We're going to be following up with you next week with details about your special 25% off of Power BI Ignite offer. And we'll also be following up with the 3 lucky winners of the 1-hour consultation with Jose. And we'll send you the webinar recording just in case you want to share it with your coworkers and friends. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to both Jose, Pat, and myself. And with that, have a great afternoon.